My name is Magid Jim Brule. I'm a Jewish inspirational storyteller, and I have a story to tell you that hopefully will bring a little joy and maybe a little inspiration besides. This is a story from the Jewish tradition, although I think you'll find it has meaning no matter what tradition, if any, you follow. It's about two rabbis. And you need to know a little bit about these two rabbis before I can tell you the story. Now, the first is Rabbi Levi Yitzhak of Berdichev. And Rabbi Levi Yitzhak was known for his exuberant prayer. I mean, he would stand in the synagogue, and as they were starting to read the Torah, if the Torah reading had the words, "and God spoke," the rabbi would leap into the air, his arms up to heaven, saying, "God spoke, God spoke. Can you imagine it? God spoke." It was also said that if he started his prayers in one corner of the synagogue, he would become so exuberant with his bowing and his bouncing that he would end up in the other corner before the prayer service was done. He was just full of life and joy in his prayers. Now, the other rabbi was Rabbi Baruch, and he was very much the opposite of Rabbi Levi Yitzhak. He was a very studious rabbi, and he understood all the depths and the turnings and the intricacies of the Torah. It was said that if he took a pin and pressed it through the pages of one of the books of Talmud, he could tell you what letter it was touching at its furthest extent and what the letter was on the other side. Now, he looked at Rabbi Levi Yitzhak and thought, this man is a fool. And Rabbi Levi Yitzhak looked at him and said, he's lost the joy in his life. But truth be told, Levi Yitzhak had an admiration for Rabbi Baruch. And he wanted to get some sense of what it was to immerse oneself so completely into such an intellectual pursuit. And so each of them had disciples, and Rabbi Levi Yitzhak had his disciples made it known to Rabbi Baruch that he would like to meet with him sometime, perhaps just over a Shabbos dinner, a Friday night dinner. Rabbi Baruch was opposed. This was not the sort of encounter he wanted to have at all. Yes, the Sabbath was full of joy, but it was a very refined joy. It was joy that has been compared to that of paradise. So at first he said no, but the disciples persisted and they persisted, and finally, Rabbi Baruch said, with these conditions, Rabbi Levi Yitzhak must maintain decorum throughout the meal. If he starts to bounce and all that, he's out. Decorum. Now, Levi Yitzhak's disciples were not at all certain that he'd be able to live up to those requirements, but he was desperate to spend a Shabbos with Rabbi Baruch. And so he agreed. And as the evening approaches, truth be told, everybody was wondering how this was going to go. So after the evening prayers had been said and people came back to Rabbi Baruch's home for dinner, The disciples were crowded in around the table. Rabbi Levi Yitzhak walks in, and he's standing with his arms close to his side. Look of pained concentration on his face. Now, the first thing that one does before the meal is to make a blessing over wine. And they looked to Rabbi Levi Yitzhak. And he stood there with his teeth clenched and his shoulders tight, and he uttered the prayer, and he did not bounce, he did not jump, he did not leap. And when it was through, he relaxed. Everyone was amazed. He'd made it through a prayer without all the craziness that he usually exhibited. They thought, maybe this will work. So they all sat down around this very long table, typical of the time, and the servants came out with the appetizers. Now, you should know that in that time, there were two traditional appetizers. One was sweet fish, fish in a sweet sauce, and the other was sour fish, a sour sauce. And so, in keeping with the joy and the peace of Shabbat, it was traditional to offer both, not to only offer one, because you never knew what your guest might be interested in. And so, as the servant made his way around the table with the tray of sweet fish and sour fish, he came to Rabbi Levi Yitzhak. And he asked him, which do you prefer, sweet fish or sour fish? And it happened. Levi Yitzhak looked down at the fish, and he said, sweet fish, sour fish, who cares? I love God! His hand struck the platter. The platter went tumbling through the air. Sweet and sour fish turning with it, and it headed directly for Rabbi Baruch, where it splattered on his prayer shawl, his tallit. The room gasped into silence. Surely it couldn't have gone worse. And when they looked, there was Rabbi Baruch, unmoving. The sauces trickling down his prized tallit. His disciples raced over with cloths to clean it up, and he held up his hands. He said, don't you touch this tallit. This tallit has been blessed by one of the holiest men I have ever had the great fortune to meet. I will be buried in this tallit. And so it was. Rabbi Baruch and Rabbi Levi Yitzhak did not change the way they studied or prayed or led their lives, except that they became friends and they each learned from each other. And I expect that they did change, each for the better. You know, we have life in life choices. And it seems like we have to choose one or the other, and there's maybe difficult times where we have a choice to make. But what's most important is that however we understand that wonderful joy that can come to us, to remember how holy it is, how beautiful it is to be able to find it again, even in the midst of what seems to be the worst possible circumstances. And this is the blessing I ask for each of you, that you never lose sight of that inner joy that's available to us all. Thank you.